This is Broken Masamune, or Masamune, or Demetrius, and this is my first tutorial in a while, a long time. And I thought that I would start making them again, at least for Sony Vegas. Maybe a little bit in HitFilm too, we'll see. I don't know. Well, Sony Vegas is what I'm best with. And I've been using it since 2007. Started with Movie Studio Platinum 8, actually. Been a long time. Anyway. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about something basic. And this is something important to everybody who uses a non-linear editing program or some kind of compositor. And it's keyframes. Keyframes play an important role when there's any kind of change in a value, be it an effect or movement. So we're going to do some of that today. We're going to go over some of these basics, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. And you might learn something you didn't know already. So I'm just going to go, let's see, let me grab some noise textures. Okay. We got this little noise texture over here. And on this menu, on the clip itself, you got edit generated media, if it's generated media such as text or anything that's built within Vegas itself, basically. Pan crop, event pan crop, effects, and over here is also track motion. We might talk about that a little bit too. So let's start with edit generated media. Now, most of the keyframing when it comes to effects or media will look like this. You'll have rows with different items. Yeah, you can open this up, get more detailed. But over here, where it says animate, is what allows you to create the keyframes and actually animate these things. Otherwise, you can't have more than one value. So this is the default, at least for this preset. And if I were to change this, there is no timeline that appears that has keyframes on it. But if I push this button, all of a sudden, now there's a timeline. Okay? And for this type of setup, like Vegas has several effects that look a little different when it comes to changing them around, and we'll go over some of that as well. But when it comes to this, which is what they mostly look like, you can't just push one and then make changes to everything else. It won't work. For everything you want to have like a change over time or whatnot, you have to push it, push it again to disable it. Okay, so we'll work with this right now, number of layers. When I first push the button, there is one keyframe visible. It's right here. You can kind of only see half of it. It's like a diamond. Okay, it's right here, starting at the 0 point of the media. I can click it and move it around, and nothing changes. As long as there's only one value, nothing is going to change. let's move this back to the starting point. And let's go all the way to the end here. The frame right before the end. And then let's make a change. Let's change it to this, reducing the number of layers. So if I come back here to this first keyframe, now it says 3,449. As I make my way down to the next keyframe, it slowly changes. This is the way keyframes work when it comes to generating media and effects. When it comes to movement, like in the pan crop menu, there's a few other options. But here it's always going to be linear. Okay, the other effect type, let's just grab this. It's called, well, it's called whatever you want. There's several ones. I know soft contrast is one of them. So let me grab that. Soft contrast. Now, this looks a little bit different. You don't have those buttons. Instead, you've got something at the bottom here that says animate. I believe Legacy Text has this down here too. And once you push this button, basically the same thing happens. Now you have a timeline. You can move around and create keyframes or change values. The difference about this one is there is no separate button for any of these values. Any change I make here will now be reflected in the keyframe, like so. Okay, or like so. Now those two animate. So that's really the only difference when it comes to there. Now let's deal with movement. Red. Alright, I'm going to go into the pan crop. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, or smaller, more rather. And I'm going to push it to the end here. Now we're going to talk about movement with keyframes. And for one, you can do the basic thing, which is what we were doing before. Oh. Okay, so sometimes these keyframes are so close together that it basically looks like they're on top of each other, and they kind of literally are. But if you zoom in, you can see I made like a keyframe right next to another to the point where I couldn't tell from the zoom out was that, so I'm just going to delete this one. Okay. Let's be aware of that. Alright, I'm going to move this to the end here. Okay. Now when we play it, it starts from the left and goes to the right. Fascinating. Okay. However, if you were to go to this clip, right click on that clip, keyframe, right click on it and change the interpolation, to these right here, to smooth. And let's copy this. Yes, we want to create a new copy. Go back here. Change this to linear, or back to linear. So we have one on smooth and one on linear. Now when you use smooth, it starts off a little slower, picks up speed in the middle, and slows down at the end. But they all wind up at the same place at the same time. I'm changing the color just so you can tell the difference here. So watch the difference. One is going to maintain the same speed. The other is going to slow down, speed up, then slow down. Or, as you can see, it's just a little something that makes the animation a little bit more natural. So now let's try let's go with fast. And I believe fast I think it starts slow and ends fast, or vice versa. Let's just change that color to, let's go green for fast. So fast, it starts off faster and then slows down a lot before it reaches the end. But again, they all reach the destination at the same speed. This is just something that's trying to make the animation look a little more natural. So let's try this with one more time. Let's go change it to slow. And let's change the color to yellow. Honestly, I'm not sure how that's different than oh, okay. Yeah. It's basically the opposite of fast. It starts slow and ends fast, whereas fast starts fast and ends slow. I'm not sure what sharp does. Sharp. That's interesting. That's actually kind of cool. It starts off kind of fast, basically stops in the middle, and then picks up speed towards the end again. That's interesting. I learned something I didn't know before. And the last one, it's actually one of the more useful ones, is hold. And hold, it basically cuts out the animation. It's basically saying this value is going to remain until you hit the next keyframe. So green stays there until it gets to the very end here, and then boom, it hits the end. That could be useful. You could also do that manually, but it's just more work, so it's nicer just to use hold. And the last thing I'll talk about is track motion. Track motion is very similar to pan crop. You find it on the track itself. You may or may not be able to see this button if you're using 15 or 16. If you can't see it, click here, go to edit visible button set. It also might look a little different if you're using something other than 15 or higher. But it will say track motion, you click on it, you get a menu. Very similar to pan crop. This has a few things pan crop can't do, and vice versa. So what we're going to do, and the only thing I really want to talk about here, is again the fact that we're dealing with keyframes. And so let's say you have a project, and in that project you want to do a picture-in-picture effect, for instance, okay, like so. And so you go to track motion and say, hey, okay, I want this top one here to be smaller, and I'm going to put it over here. That's great, okay? Then later on, you go and you're like, I want to put some text up, so some text up. You slap it up here. And oh no, why is my text not centered? You see? It sort of kills the rest of the track. So in order to avoid that, and just leave these changes specific to the events, we're going to go into track motion. It's also kind of easier to work from here, I feel like. So this is where the change is going to start. Alright, prior to this change, I'm going to go back one frame. I'm going to restore box. Okay. And then I'm going to come to the end here. I'm just going to create a keyframe. I'm going to move forward one. Gonna move forward one. Look on it. Some of the hotkeys don't work on certain timelines. It's annoying. Okay, so create a keyframe here, and then we're going to move forward one keyframe, and then we're going to restore box. So, which you do by right-clicking and pressing restore box. Sorry if I didn't say that. So now, with our understanding of keyframes, we have this change here. We've got our dandy picture-in-picture effect going on, and then later on in the timeline, where we want to utilize that track for text or something, or whatever, now there's no problems with panning, cropping, alignment, or whatever, because we took care of the keyframes over here. So that's kind of a general understanding of keyframes. They're super important. You can make the screen dance with them, and you can also absolutely ruin everything with them if you're not careful. So I hope this was a little bit helpful. Subscribe if you want more tutorials. I'm going to be making more, and if there's a specific tutorial or something you might like help with, leave that in the comments, and I'll be taking requests.